what's really weird? We used to have tails.
Okay, most of us did. But somewhere along the line, we lost them.
So where are they now? Are they in our pants? Do fish have them? And why can't I wag my pants like a dog? These are important questions that scientists have spent a lot of time trying to answer.
They're pretty tail-end.
And after a bunch of fossil digging and DNA analyzing, they think they finally have the answer. This is the funny science story of where all the humans' tails went. Our closest living relatives, the chimpanzee and bonobo, still have tails, but humans don't. But we have this weird little gap where our tails should be. And it's not just us. Nearly all land mammals have lost their tails in some evolutionary event. But until recently, scientists didn't know when that happened or why. They knew that tails were useful. After all, a lot of animals still have them. They help with balance, mating rituals, and keeping flies away from your buns. So it seemed weird that almost all mammals would give up something so helpful, unless there was a really good reason. Now, there are lots of reasons why an evolutionary trait might disappear. Like if it is not very good at helping you survive or reproduce. Or maybe your ancestors just got tired of it. Over millions of years, things change and species evolve. But for the trait to disappear completely, that doesn't happen very often. You see, evolution isn't always adding features.
Sometimes it takes away ones that aren't being used anymore.
Scientists wondered if maybe the trait just wasn't all that important.
Maybe animals could live just fine without it.
Now we know better than to judge other animals by human standards. Just because we can't imagine life without our behinds doesn't mean others can too. A lot of animals get by without ever using their tails. For example, opossums have long, skinny tails that don't look like they do much of anything except maybe hold their possum babies. Their babies have tails though. They lose them after about 20 weeks. So scientists started to wonder if maybe the tail isn't useless, but it only works if it's a certain size. And maybe the ancestors of modern mammals had small, useless tails that just got in the way.
But if that were true, we should have found some small proto-tailed fossils by now. But we haven't. So the tail couldn't have been that bad.
So then scientists thought maybe the tail became a problem only after we left the water and took our fishy tails onto land. There is evidence that mammals evolved from aquatic animals that looked kind of like a mix between a crocodile and a beaver. They were called proto-wombats.
Wombats are just really cute. Furry little beaver things that hang out on land. But they're actually more closely related to pigs.
Scientists thought maybe these critters had really long tails that worked great in the water.
But once they came on land, those tails became dangerous. Like a crab claw tail that could reach across the whole room and smack you in the face.
Now, if that were true, we should find fossils of animals with shorter and shorter tails showing the evolution from danger noodle to nothing. But we don't. So maybe the tail wasn't quite such a liability on land. Scientists also wondered if the tail was a bit too close to the body, like a monkey's tail.
When they move, their tails whip back and forth, dangerously close to their heads.
So it made sense that mammals might have wanted to lose it.
But again, we should find fossils of animals with shorter and shorter tails. And we don't. So maybe the tail wasn't quite so perilous. If it wasn't harmful, but it also wasn't helpful, then it seems like it would have just disappeared because nothing happened to it. But we don't see that either. So what happened to the tail? It turns out there is one thing that can explain the sudden disappearance of nearly every creature, S-tail, a big asteroid, about 66 million years ago. Earth experienced a mass extinction. And yes, we know that one. It's the that this asteroid had another unexpected effect. Fossils showed that right after the impact, many land animals had smaller bodies and shorter limbs. Lots of species were affected, including proto-wombats, the crocodile beaver things I mentioned before. But over time, animals rebounded and evolved back to their normal sizes. Some species disappeared during the asteroid event, but mammals as a whole survived. And a few million years later, they were back to doing mammal things like climbing trees, having babies, and losing their tails. But how does an asteroid explain a disappearing tail? Well, it turns out that after the asteroid hit, there was a lot of global warming going on. The climate changed from warm and wet to hot and dry. And depending on where you lived, it was basically the end of summer forever. Animals who couldn't adapt to these conditions died out. But mammals had an advantage. See? Mammals are mostly medium-sized creatures. Think beagles and squirrels and your uncle. And medium-sized animals have a special advantage in hot, dry climates. They absorb heat fast, but don't
Overheat as quickly.
In other words, medium-sized mammals are like Goldilocks. Not too hot, not too cold, just right. So mammals that were well adapted to the new world started breeding like crazy, and that may have had something to do with the loss of their tails. When you're warm, you sweat to cool down. And when you have a tail, you've got less surface area to sweat off, so you can't cool down as quickly. Also, tails tend to be pretty metabolically expensive to maintain, meaning that having one costs more energy, and if food is hard to come by, you might not want to spend extra calories on a tail. It looks like the post-asteroid world's favorite smaller, tailless mammals.
So, over time, they bred and eventually gave rise to the furry, tailless apes that would eventually become us.
Of course, bigger animals like elephants and horses kept their tails, but they're the exception, not the rule.
So there you have it. A neat little piece of the puzzle that's been bugging scientists for decades.
By putting together clues from fossils, the environment, and even genetics,
They finally figured out what happened to all the tails.
turns out it was probably the asteroid that killed the dinosaurs that caused our ancestors to lose theirs. But that raises another question. If tails are so great, why don't we still have them? I mean, I'd love to be able to wag my pants. Well, we actually do have a tailbone, the last 4 or 5 vertebrae at the bottom of our spine. It's just not connected to anything. A couple million years ago, our ancestors started walking upright, which required a change in their spines. That freed up our hands to do stuff like hold babies and make tools, but it also meant that our tailbones had nothing to attach to. Eventually, our ancestors lost the ability to move their tailbones. These days, they're basically just a couple extra bones that make sitting kind of uncomfortable sometimes. And maybe in another couple million years, we'll evolve to where we have no tailbone at all. Then, all the animals that are alive today will have tails except for us. Then people will be like, why don't we have tails?
And we'll be like, I don't know, man.
We used to, but one time an asteroid hit, and it was too much of a hassle to grow one back. We don't have tails. We've got pants. And pants have pockets.
And in those pockets, you might have a penny and a crumpled tissue and exactly 2 Skittles.
You know what else is pockets? Real quick, let me show you something. Every week,